morning, everybody. My name is Anne Marie Mattia. As most of you know, or some of you know, I was able to meet you last week. I am the new assistant principal at Bailey Elementary School. I wanted to thank you all for the warm reception that I received last week when we met. It was great. Mr. Matthews had said that he thought I would really like being a part of this staff, that I would really enjoy working with you, and so far you've proven him right, so thank you so much. I'm really honored and really thrilled to be here, so I just can't thank you enough. As a little bit of a thank you though, I have brought in some snacks, so if you haven't had a chance yet to get some snacks, please help yourself. Also, when you signed in, there was a little piece of paper for a door prize, and if you haven't had a chance to sign the slip of paper and put it in the jar, please do so at some point this morning. I always like to do a door prize at any of my professional development sessions or my meetings. I just think it's fun to get something for free, right? So welcome. Are you guys all excited to be back to school? I am very excited, as I was saying, and Mr. Matthews asked me today to spend a few minutes talking to you, or a little bit of time talking to you about my vision for instruction, which hopefully will become our vision for instruction. And you will definitely be hearing more about this as we go throughout the year, but I wanted to spend some time today just kind of giving you the big picture. As we begin, I want to tell you the story of Newport News, Virginia. I don't know if you've ever heard of this city, but Newport News is like many, many other cities in the United States. School district trying to meet the Virginia state standards at the time. We're going back to 2002, 2003 timeframe. They're working hard to teach their students the standards, but there were definitely gaps in their achievement. They had issues that they didn't really know how to address. They weren't sure why it was that they weren't learning, the students weren't learning and weren't achieving the way that they should have been. So they set upon this path. It was actually a 6-year journey under the leadership of a superintendent named Marcus Newsom. And I just love this story because it's such a success story. They went about setting up a lot of different, putting a lot of different things into place, and I'm not going to go into great detail about this, but they wanted to, their clear mission and their clear goal was to meet AYP and also have all 45 of their schools become accredited. So it was a large task, and the superintendent, Mr. Newsom, first set about meeting with the different groups to find out what they were already doing well. And he built upon those strengths, and then together with the input of them, they came up with that clear vision of meeting AYP and achieving accreditation. And from there, he went on to go ahead and build trust and relationship among all the stakeholders so that everybody was on board with that vision. They had the same common mission to be able to attain this accreditation in AYP. They also put into place several different ways. He created a pathway to success by setting in place or creating several different things. I'm not going to go into great detail about this, but he created data teams. He put new personnel to be able to monitor student progress. They identified where those gaps were in their district. What subgroups weren't meeting AYP, and why weren't they achieving at the same rate as the other subgroups? So he identified those. Along the way, they celebrated their big successes like meeting AYP and also their small successes. He created a team or communities within this large district so that together, collectively, they became invested in the children and the students' learning as well as the success of the district. And because of that, because they all had a stake in the vision of what it was that they were trying to accomplish, they had this lateral accountability. They kind of held each other accountable for the learning, for the students' learning. It was an idea or that they were all in this together, that their student learning was everybody's responsibility. And throughout all this, I bring this up because they have this, the title of the slide is Constancy of Purpose. They had a constant purpose, and I just love this, and I feel like that really applies to what I see as our vision for our school. A constancy of purpose, a constant purpose, and an understanding that we are going to stay true to what it is that we want for our students. So if we think about that, if we're going to stay true to that, we have to think about what is our common mission. What is that vision for our students? What do we want? And I know what I want, and I hope it's what you want as well, is student learning. This is going to be the single focus of our work at Bailey Elementary School. We want to be measuring student learning and making sure that student learning is occurring. Now, I use the word learning and not achievement because I feel achievement sometimes, that word achievement, is more to do with standardized assessments. And we know that learning takes place in a lot more places, or is evident in a lot more ways than just on standardized assessments. And that's why I call it student learning. And I use this magnifying glass because I like to think about that we're looking at everything we do through the lens of student learning, through the lens of learning. Oh, I forgot to mention, as I go through this, if you have questions, there's little post-it notes at your tables. If you can just jot down those questions, we'll have time at the end to go through or go over some of those questions. But you'll also see that I put up a poster or a chart paper over there. You can always post those little post-it notes to that piece of paper. I'm calling that the parking lot. And we can talk about that after our break when I'm finished with my presentation. So just like Marcus Newsom did, he started with their successes. What are they doing well? And clearly we're doing a lot of things very well. I was excited to sit down with Mr. Matthews in the beginning of the summer to learn about all the wonderful things that are already taking place in the school. So clearly we're doing some things right, or you're doing some things right. 90% of our students are meeting district benchmark. Our state test scores are strong. I was really excited to see that your schedule already allows for team time to be happening, and I know that you are already meeting with your grade level teams. We're going to be lending a little bit more structure to that team time perhaps this year, but I know that it's great that it already exists. From what I understand, your grade level teams get along, and there hasn't been a lot of change to your teams. I do know we have some new faces in the audience, some new in our staff. We definitely have some new people joining us, but by and large, from what I've even observed last week, you all seem to get along, and that's a positive thing. Professional development is a priority for this district, and that was one of the reasons why I actually joined and looked at becoming a part of the school. As you know, in my last role, professional development played a huge part in my work, and I would like it to continue to do so. And I love a district that values that professional development and wants to help their teachers to learn and to grow, because that's what's going to help our kids. Finally, one of the other things that I think we're doing really well and we're very blessed or lucky about is the fact that we have available curriculum materials and resources that will allow you to be able to teach the lessons that you need to. So we're definitely in good shape in that regard. Marcus Newsom built relationships with all stakeholders. He was a new superintendent. I'm a new assistant principal. You know each other, but you don't know me, and I don't know you. And so we are going to we won't have to learn, we're just going to build relationships with one another to be able to work for the betterment of our students. And how are we going to do that? We are going, well, I know, for me, I'll speak from my perspective. I'm going to be available and approachable and completely honest and open with you. Now, available. I had an open door policy in my last position, and I want to continue to have that policy with you. Not just open door, but please, open email, open text, open phone. Please reach out to me whenever you have any questions. The more you get to know me, the more you'll realize that I'm very approachable. I want to be able to be a support to you, so I need you to be able to reach out to me and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can we talk about this? We're going to be collaborating with each other throughout the year. I know I'll be working alongside, side by side with you, so you'll definitely be getting to know me, and I'll be getting to know you a little bit more as we work together for student learning. We will support each other with specific feedback, helpful suggestions, and other useful strategies. And if we think about this through the lens of learning that I said earlier, that student learning piece, if we think about those strategies, that feedback, those suggestions, then it helps to depersonalize the feedback that we're getting, because it's really for the good of the children, right? This worked well because it helped my students learn, or this didn't work well because my students didn't learn. It's less about the teacher or the individual, and therefore we have more of a responsibility to be able to share that if we think about it from the point of student learning. We obviously are going to be sharing this common purpose. I've said it now several times. What is that? It's going to be student learning. And also, one of the ways that we're going to do this is that we're going to be thinking not just outside of the box, but above the box. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we won't be just trying things for the sake of trying things. We're going to be trying strategies and using strategies because they produce better results. I'm all about trying something different and learning something new. I think that's fabulous. But we have to say, has this really increased student learning? Have they made additional gains? And if they have, great, let's continue to do that. And if it hasn't resulted in that, then we need to think, this is not really working for us. We want to constantly be striving for better ways. Now, this slide has got a lot on it, but really I wanted to highlight high student achievement and what that looks like. These things that I listed on here are things that are within our control. We know that there's a lot of things that the students bring with us, and there's a lot of circumstances that are not within our control. However, these are the things that are within our control. So what are some of those things that are that help to increase student achievement? Thoughtful, well-designed lessons. Lessons that are teachers have really spent time developing because they're really what's good. They're just right lessons. The objectives really are a good match with the students. Well-organized and well-managed classrooms, and by that I don't mean classes that are rigid. By no means do I want to see classes that have rows or desks in rows, or classes that are completely silent. That's not what I'm looking for. In fact, I think the best classrooms are those that feel a little bit messy, those that have small kids collaborating in groups on the rug, and there's a buzz in the air, and kids are really, really engaged in that learning. That's what I'm looking for. But even within that, there's a certain level of knowing and understanding what their responsibilities are, and they have a certain level of respect for one another and for the learning that's taking place. And so that's what I mean by well-organized and well-managed. When I walk into a classroom, I'm going to be looking for evidence of teaching through anchor charts and instructional resources, teaching posters. If I know that there are teaching posters and other different things around the classroom, I know that these are tools and resources for the students to be able to learn from and go to, and I know that that's helping to promote student achievement. Instruction that results in student engagement, well, I talked a little bit about that. Students that are questioning, reacting, responding, reflecting on their learning. Classrooms where children know the expectations for what it is that you're looking for. Let's give an example of a math problem-solving task. If a child has the rubric or the scoring checklist ahead of time, he or she will know why they scored the way they did. If they got a 12 and not a 15, they might say, oh, well, it's because I didn't do this, and I should have done this because I knew that this is what would have given me a 15. But giving them that chance to reflect upon that helps them to be able to internalize what it is that they need to do next time. Student assessment and the use of data for setting instructional goals. Absolutely, this is key, and we'll be spending some time in a moment talking about that, but that definitely helps with student achievement. Small group instruction and one-on-one teaching. I know that this is an elementary school, and we do small group instruction all day long, right? That's how we teach. But that small group instruction allows for targeted, focused objectives for children who have like needs. And that's really how we advance learning. It's how we are making sure that the children are really receiving the instruction that they need. Teachers collaborating with their colleagues and, of course, with their families, knowing that this is a partnership, that both families and educators are in this together for the students' learning, and that they have a mutual responsibility for that. I also put here a sense of urgency and focused learning, and by a sense of urgency, I mean the fact that not that I want you to be rushing around like crazy, but that you have some sense of knowing where you're going, what direction you're going, and when you need to get there. So that there is this kind of forward march of learning, and that you're thinking, okay, how can I advance this learning, and how can I move the students from point A to point B? That's what I mean by a sense of urgency. I also said, does this sound familiar? Probably some of this sounds familiar because last year I know that you spent a great deal of time learning more about EE, 4, and J, and we're obviously going to continue to have those discussions throughout this year. But a lot of this is what our distinguished teachers, our most distinguished teachers, already have in place, and the results are what we want them to be. They're good. So we know that if we go back to this actually for a moment, we have high student achievement, right? How do we know it's high? Well, the data will tell us how the children perform on their district assessments, on any common curricular assessments, how they do on our state assessments. The data is going to tell us that our children are learning. Likewise, the data will also tell us if our students are not learning. And we can say, well, what could be the causes of this? If I go back again to this slide, I know that if these are the things that are in place for high student achievement, then these things, in absence of these items, or these particular things not being done as well as they could be, is going to result in lower student achievement. And we're going to be targeting that. So I told you we talk about student data, and I really want to spend a couple minutes on this slide. How will we use data to inform our instruction? In my previous district, we used a tool called SharePoint. It was a database that collected the assessment scores for all of our students for all the different things that they did throughout the year. Chapter assessments in math, district reading benchmarks, district writing samples. All this was collected in one area, and this allowed for us to track student progress, for us to analyze the data, and for us to be able to work with that data to be able to set goals. Right now, we don't have that in place here. I am going to talk to the technology supervisor to see if we have something like this available. I've been told that there is something like this at the high school. If we cannot get an actual database here at Bailey, then we can create our own. I can do this through Excel and through spreadsheets. But Mr. Matthews and I have talked a lot about this throughout the summer, and we feel like it's going to be a step in the right direction for us to be able to have all that data in one place. Then, along with you, we're going to analyze that data, and we're going to set some goals. I'm talking small, short-term goals. We're going to set goals for our students. We're going to group them as needed, instruct, reassess, and hopefully measure growth. From there, we're going to reanalyze those results, and we're going to repeat this process, and that's how we're going to make forward gains in their learning. Small goals, good instruction, reassess, and reanalyze and reset those goals. So that's what we're going to be doing. And I know that you've been doing some of this. I believe that you've been doing some of this already because the results are showing this. Our children are doing very well. Maybe it hasn't been as formalized as it's going to be this year, but I do believe that you are already using that data to inform your instruction. Another critical component that we're going to be looking at this year is lesson planning. And if I ask you this question, what is the most important component of the lesson plan? I would hope that somewhere in your answer would be one of these three components: objectives, assessment, and reflection. And by this I mean you could spin this in any way to be able to kind of come up with this answer. We write our objectives for student learning. We want to make sure that our students are meeting the objectives, that this is the learning that they're taking on. How do we know that? Well, by the assessment that we do. Now, that assessment can look differently from lesson to lesson. We know that, right? It could be an observation, an exit slip, an actual formal assessment. But we use the assessment to decide how well our children have met those objectives. And we reflect upon that to say, well, why did they meet the objective, or why didn't they? And what am I going to do differently next time? Or what am I going to do the same because it resulted in really good results, right? It resulted in good student learning. So any way we look at this, the primary most important objective component is the objective, is the fact that we need to make sure that our students are learning what we're asking of them or what we're teaching them. Lesson plans also provide other evidence though. They help us to know, and they'll help me to be able to learn your curriculum, and also they'll help me to have some kind of evidence that it's actually being implemented. I'll be able to see what science or social studies unit that you're teaching, you know, how many small groups you're getting to, what your guided reading looks like, what the focus of instruction is for your students in second grade or in third grade. So this will be really key for me to get to know the curriculum and get to know the units of study and also you as teachers. Now, I've been told that, like my previous district, your units of study are already aligned with the state standards. You are very, very lucky because in many districts that is not the case. It was like that in my previous district, and what I found was that my teachers really knew the units of study very well. They knew the objectives, the day-to-day objectives that they were teaching very well, but they didn't really know the standards. They didn't really know what they were being measured by, or measured against by the end of the year. They didn't really have a good sense of what student mastery looked like when it came to the new Common Core. And so they kind of, in my opinion, they kind of lost sight of the forest through the trees. So what I'd like to do, and I've actually spoken to Mr. Matthews about this, is I would like for you this year, we're going to try this, for one subject per week, I would like you to include the standards for that particular subject area. So if it's week 1, you're going to include the reading standards that you'll be meeting in your lesson plans. Now, obviously, that's going to vary from week to week. I'm not asking you to do all subjects every week. I think that would be too much, and the work is already done for you. We know we're aligned. But I really want you to get a good sense and understanding of what those objectives are so that you can have a better sense of where we need to go and where the children need to be by the end of the year. Now, even with the good things that are happening in our classrooms, and even with, analyzing data and setting goals and writing good lesson plans, we know that there are still times when our students are not making progress. And this is where our role of the support teachers is going to take a slightly different slant this year. They have in the past worked only with the children who really needed the support. They've been identified and they have been receiving services from our support teachers. This year, I know that we're lucky enough, I'm so happy to see that we have reading and math specialists as well as our ESL teachers. This year, they're going to sit on our INRS team. They're going to be a regular member of that team. And then they're also going to consult with classroom teachers as needed about children that you're concerned with. There'll be a consultation form that they'll be filled out, and they'll meet with you to go over data, to talk about the student's performance, and so on. What will result from that may be them giving you suggested strategies to help to implement within the classroom. It may not be an automatic pickup or referral